Hello, and welcome to the Failure Gap, where we talk with leaders about closing the space between agreement and alignment. We love talking with interesting people, and today we're joined by Andy Cowan. Andy is the president at Particle Measuring Systems. He's had a long career working with multinational companies with a strong background in finance. His appointment at Particle Measuring Systems brings him to my backyard here in Colorado, where my colleagues and I have had the wonderful opportunity to get to know him and his team even better. I'm looking forward to him having the opportunity to share his thoughts on the power of aligned leadership and share a bit about his leadership journey. Andy, welcome to the Failure Gap.
Great to be here, Julie. Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah. Well, I would love to start our conversation by giving you the opportunity to share with our listeners a little bit about your path to leadership, some of the twists and turns that have landed you in this role as president at Particle Measuring Systems.
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned Colorado. Clearly, as you hear my accent today, it's not from Colorado. It's from Scotland. So I've travelled the world in terms of travelling the job, but mainly really across the US and the UK. So that's mostly where I've been based. I've worked, as you said, in finance for actually, it's probably over 25 years. That's quite frightening now I think about the length of time. And yeah, multinationals, but mainly in computer manufacturing, telecoms, monitoring systems, precision measurement, which is where I am today. I'm in a company right now which has got its parent company headquarters in the UK, but they have multiple companies around the world. So my sort of path to leadership has been mostly through the finance function. I've been very fortunate in that finance function. I've been able to have full-time jobs and also interim jobs around like major projects like ERPs, for example, acquisitions, divestitures. I've ran some services organizations. I've even been a sort of chief of staff for a division as well. So I've had multiple different angles in which to learn leadership outside of finance as well. But whatever role it's been fantastic just to take things from each of those roles and learn, because effectively you need to learn how to manage and influence outside of your own function as well. There's been some twists and turns in there. I can definitely say there's been mostly success. There's been the odd area that maybe I didn't do so well, so I can maybe talk later about some of that. But really in that period of time, it's been a finance functional leader. But I've been really lucky to have great functional leaders, business leaders to learn from during that time, taking the very best out of each of those individuals and try and then suit that to my personality and my style as well. So it's been a great learning overall. And really thoroughly enjoying general management now. For the last 5 years, I've been working in 2 or 3 roles where I've been actually leading companies in general. So that's been, again, a fantastic learning.
You know, I really appreciate your emphasis on each of these roles, giving you that opportunity to learn. And I think that's just important for people to know, especially for our listeners who are a little earlier in their careers, to recognize that each role doesn't have to necessarily be a step up or a step you can look at different roles as each of them being an accumulation of experiences that bring you into more general management roles.
Absolutely. No, I think there's been many times where I've taken a step to the side, or I can think of a couple of examples when there's maybe in theory a step down, but it's not really something that really has come into my head. It's more about the opportunity, again, an opportunity to learn. Sometimes it's about the person you're working for as well, and learning from their experiences, and it's about the team that you're part of as well. So it's really a great opportunity. Whatever role you move into is to determine, what can this give me? What gaps have I got that I'm going to learn from? And yeah, sometimes you're taking a bit of a risk, but I'm certainly not one that believes in try and get to the very top in the quickest way possible. That typically doesn't work too well, and you have to learn different experiences as you sort of travel in your career.
Yeah, and the ability to synthesize those experiences and bring them together and take it on yourself to figure out what you can learn from this experience, I think really embodies that growth mindset that helps leaders to get their teams aligned and deliver together. And so speaking of that, I would love to hear if there is an example. We've all been in the failure gap at different times in our lives, and I've shared a few of my own here on the podcast. I'm curious if there is something, as you think about this challenge that at Karrikins Group we love to lean into. How do you get aligned to deliver together? Is there something that comes to mind for you that's an example of being in agreement that something could be a good idea for you, but it's either a challenge to get aligned and do it and get it done, or where you've been successful with that in your own life, in your own experiences?
Yeah, I mean, alignment is so important in every part of your business, in the business world, even the personal world. But that's probably a different podcast, Julie.
Yeah.
But certainly in the business world, it is so important that you have that agreement to alignment. Having a team that knows where it's going in the same direction. You're aligned on how you work with each other. As you know, Julie, we've been working here in our ways of working. And making sure we understand how, as a leadership team, and that's effectively the executive leadership team, how we work together. Which things do we make the real important things that make the most for us to be together as a team, to lead as a team, is really important. And we're going to take that to the next level as well, down to our next 50 leaders. So it's really important at whatever level of leadership you're looking at, that you do have that alignment. And also, I think leadership and management, very different things. So when you're managing people and managing day-to-day tasks, operational tasks, so different to leadership. Sometimes you don't necessarily need that alignment when you're managing. You can just barge ahead and get a task done. But when you're leading, you have to have that alignment. It's really, really important that everyone's with you. They understand the vision, the strategy, where you're going, and this is how we're all going to move towards it. So to me, that's just really a core part of being an executive leader today.
Andy, I don't know if you've observed this, but I certainly have, that one of the most challenging transitions for people in their careers is to move from a manager to more of a leader, and especially an enterprise level leader who needs to understand how the business fits together. And I feel like that's the point in a career where the skills of being able to get people aligned really come into play. And I'm curious, as you've watched, and maybe you've experienced it yourself, and as you've watched people who work for you go through that transition, either successfully or unsuccessfully, what do you think, what stands out to you as the characteristics of a leader or someone who's making that step into enterprise leadership, and you think, yeah, they're going to make it, or I don't know, I think they might struggle? What stands out to you as some of those characteristics?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think first of all, a great leader, I guess similar to a manager as well, you have to listen. You have to listen to various stakeholders. You have to listen to your employees. You have to listen to customers. You have to listen to your peers. So that's the first thing that you have to do, because if you don't listen properly, then you don't understand the challenges and the issues, and you can't be in someone else's shoes if you don't listen. And I think that's a big part of leadership. You have to understand being in someone else's shoes. What are they thinking? What are they trying to achieve? Because sometimes I always like to say, treat it as if someone's always look for that positive intent that everyone's got. And sometimes you don't agree with what they're trying to do. But it's really important that you understand you're in their shoes, you're trying to understand there's positive intent, then you can actually try and understand what they're trying to achieve. So, and then you can therefore work with that and try and influence and manage around that as well. So I think that's a really important part of leadership for me. The other aspect is, and it's in our ways of working, courage. It's the courage to be able to, and it's not just courage to be direct. That's very important, obviously, but it's the courage to be able to challenge respectfully. It's the opportunity to really engage with people and to do it transparently. And I think if you're transparent as a leader, people will follow you. They will. You do get that buy-in that you need throughout at various levels in the organisation. So to me, it's that listening, it's the courage, it's making sure you build a team. I'm a huge believer in team sports. So I'll use analogies around team sports all the time. You should ask my team. But to me, if you don't have a strong, you don't have a strong defence, a strong midfield, a strong attack. If I'm using a football analogy, you can't have each other's backs. You can't understand where everyone plays, what their strengths are. You need to be able to understand all of that as a leader. And I think that's what I've seen in strong leaders, and I've tried to copy and mold myself in some of that as well.
Yeah, I think that's especially important when you go from a discipline like finance or HR or engineering, or, if you're an expert in your product and you have that really strong and you have that confidence in that discipline. It can be really challenging for people when they reach that point in the career where they need to become more generalists across the business. They need to understand and be listening to colleagues who are talking about an area that they might be really unfamiliar with. And I like your push to keep listening and assuming positive intent, that people in other parts of the business, you're all trying to have the business be successful. Nobody's trying to make the business fail. So how do you lean into that with courage? And I really think there's a connection between having the courage to stay curious and not be so sure that you know the answer, because you might just know the answer for your part of the business, not for the business as a whole. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. I mean, I'll just use my example. I am involved with a product that's very technically complex. But I can't possibly know everything about the technical complexities of the design of the product that I'm currently the president for that company. But I have to trust in the team that I've got. I have to trust in the team. Obviously, you build on people's strengths. So having that team where you have a mixture of technical experience, marketing experience. Yes, I do know a lot about finance, so that helps in that world. But all of the other areas, you're using that sort of general experience, and then you have to utilize your team's knowledge and your team's expertise. If you don't do that, you're probably going to fail, because in those situations, you can't know how to resolve all of those issues, and you do need help. And I think that's where the power of the team comes in as well. You can't also just rely on individual silos. You have to bring those experiences together to come up with the best decisions for the company as well. So it's really a combination of making sure that you have a team that works together, is empowered together, and really manages through problems together as well.
And you mentioned trust in there, and I think that is so important. I think Stephen Covey wrote The Speed of Trust. I could have that wrong. But this idea that you can move so much more effectively as a team when you have that trust in place. And I do think that trust, if we go back to where you started around listening, positive intent, having that courage and transparency, all of those things fuel a team that can trust each other to be working towards shared goals.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're making really difficult decisions in a corporate environment, and those decisions can impact people, they can impact customers, you have to have that trust in each other, and you have to have that, as you said, we've mentioned it a few times now, Julie, that positive intent, because sometimes you make decisions and they're not the right ones. But if you're aligned as a team, this is where we're going to go, that we're going to try this. Sometimes you're taking a risk. It's important you go together as a team, and you succeed as a team, and you either fail as a team or you learn from that failure as a team. And this is what we'll do differently next time. And yes, sometimes it has to be down to me to make that fundamentally that big decision at the end. But having that team alignment behind you, having everyone's got each other's backs is really, really important. You can then feel confident that you're going in the right direction. And again, having that strategy as a beacon is so important. If everyone knows your strategy, it makes those decisions really easy as well.
Yeah. Clarity on the strategy is so important, I think, and also what that translation is of the strategy, so that people can apply it to what's happening in their parts of the business.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you think about your role as president and the role of a leader at that level in building alignment across a team of pretty diverse people with a lot of different skill sets, what comes to mind for you as some of the mindsets and group dynamics that you like to foster or encourage in your team to really help them to get to alignment on big things like the strategy, and also to stay there? Because as you know, alignment doesn't just show up every day. It's something you got to keep working on.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the dynamics of the group, it's so important. I mean, it's important first of all, it's important for me to have that important dynamic. But if you think about, I mean, we've got 700 employees across the company that we have here today, and then across the bigger company that I talked about, they've got the UK headquarters. I think it's almost 8,000. So there's a lot of employees counting on us to make the right decisions and to communicate effectively and to tell them where we're going. If you try and do that as a group, and again, go back to the sports team analogy as well, if you have one person playing out of position or one person who's not buying into the team tactics or doesn't believe we can get to where we need to be, then it does typically fall. The cracks will filter and people will see it, employees will see it. So it's really important for me in terms of those dynamics that you have a team who, first of all, the knowledge I think is a given. They've all got knowledge of each individual areas. So it's more about how do we challenge each other? How do we make the best of those experiences? How do we make sure that the motivation is there? How do we make sure that there is that tension, but that healthy tension? Because obviously we all know unhealthy tension can create cracks again in any team whatsoever. So it's really about, again, just making sure that the group dynamics are there. And that if we fail, we fail as a team, but if someone fails, someone is there to pick them up and to make sure that we take learnings from it. And there's so many, I mean, Julie, I fail. I tell my team this as well. I think I fail every day at something. There's always one decision you make or one way of working that you could have done better in and you could improve. But it's all down to how do you take that learning and how do you take it for the next time around. And my mantra is progress versus perfection. It's making sure that every single time you progress in the right direction. If you aim for perfection, yes, you might get close, but it's really better that every single day that you're progressing, you learn something and you're moving the organisation forward. That to me is how you build a strong group dynamic.
Yeah, I really appreciate that leaning into the group needing to go through those hard times together. It is by failing and learning from it that we get stronger, not just by getting a slam dunk every time.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
transformation is another typical example, Julie. I mean,
yeah.
sometimes people hear transformation and they think, oh, the company's in trouble. But actually, the best companies transform while they're actually doing well. They still look for those ways to improve, and be even stronger. And I'd like to think that our company, we're going to go through some transformation. We are going through some transformation, but we're doing it in hopefully a position of strength, and that's really important as well.
I agree completely. That idea of having the courage to self-disrupt sometimes is harder than responding to an external threat or a situation. But when you have the courage to lean into that self-transformation, you're, as you say, doing it from a place of strength. Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. I'm curious, Andy, is there a story that you can share with us or something that you're really proud of with your team where they got aligned and they got something hard done together? Something you can just walk us through to help us see how this plays out in the real world?
Yeah, I think we've had so many things this year that we've come together on, and many of those things have been outside of our control. And I'm sure the team and certainly in previous companies I've worked in, we've had COVID obviously, which has come up, but Russia-Ukraine war, which caused some challenges. This year for us, it's been around the tariffs situation. That caused a lot of difficulties for us as a company, as a US company selling into various companies, especially into China, but also a US company importing as well into the US. So those are examples where, as a team, when something like that happens, the Liberation Day back in April, it really brings the team together. Having that sort of almost in the trenches mentality where we're going to get through this. These are the things we have to do, all taking responsibility for our actions, all making sure that we are doing the research, understanding what we can and can't do. Those bring a tremendous amount of teamwork, and I'm extremely proud of the team in terms of what we achieved and how we balanced and how we managed things to the best possible ability for us, but also for our customers as well. So there's one great example, but they happen all the time. I think the one thing I would love to do is just have more of those proactive team sessions where actually we get ahead of some of these challenges. But in the world that we're in today, the economics that we're in today, it tends to be more of the reactive. So, but getting to reactive and proactive, that's where I think we can really grow strong in the future.
Yeah, especially as you build on those strengths that you've been growing and nurturing and developing with the team. I'm just curious, Andy, you also had a big success, I'm going to call it, with the opening of your new flagship building. And I think
Yeah.
that's very exciting. I can only imagine that your team had to really work together to make that happen, knowing that there were teams that were focused on it and delivering on it. But any moment or highlight from that experience that you'd like to share?
Absolutely, yeah. There's highlights, lowlights. There's all sorts of lights that I could share. So first of all, it was great to welcome you there as well, Julie, with many others who have been part of our success. But yeah, it was a tremendously challenging project. I mean, we're moving literally 15 minutes away. But as anyone who's moved house personally can understand, it is a huge task. It's one of those major tasks in life that can put a tremendous amount of stress on an individual, never mind a team. And I think when you look at our project, it was 3 years in the making. It was basically acquiring a building, then basically deconstructing it and reconstructing it again to meet our needs. So it was a tremendous amount of work with some excellent partners involved. But where I was really proud of our team was that we again had challenges throughout, had challenges when we were relocating, had challenges even up to the opening ceremony as well. And every single person just wanted it to go well. They wanted it to go well, not just for them, but not just for the company, but for the employees that were part of their teams, and making sure that they felt proud of what we'd achieved. And so that sort of pride really generates a lot of motivation to do the best possible things that we can do as a team and as a leadership team. And so getting together to make sure those challenges were knocked off one by one was tremendous. And the amount of project planning, again, the old adage, if you fail to prepare to fail. So having that strong planning all the way through was essential to make sure that, yeah, there were some things that didn't go according to plan, but it's how you react, how you learn, and how you move on from that and make it even bigger and stronger. So I was extremely proud of the whole team, not just the executive team, the whole team who were involved. It's a very difficult type of transition to happen, big change.
And I would imagine as you were talking, I was thinking about where you started with the idea of listening, assuming positive intent, having the courage to have tough conversations, and really creating that level of transparency around how decisions are being made that help people to understand why, their preference might not be the decision, but it's being made within a bigger context.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine that there were a lot of moments along the way with that move where those disciplines or those skills really came into play for you and for your team. And as you say, for the whole team that was involved in this pretty major accomplishment.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the fear of what could go wrong as well. So if you think about if it didn't go according to plan, think about our customers not able to get products on time or get our products at all. So you live with some of that pressure, but that pressure drives that motivation as well. But yeah, we took some risks through the whole process, and we made sure, though, at the same time, that we had a very clear strategy of what we wanted the end vision to look at. Sometimes as you visualize what you want it to actually look like in the end. And I think many of us, when we actually walked around the building, when that opening ceremony was happening, actually said, yeah, this is how we visualized it. And so that power of visualization is also very important, not just for a new building, but for a strategy in 5 years' time, or for customers that we want to make sure are successful in their worlds. Visualizing all of that is so important, and making sure that you bring that into the thinking as well, and the planning of the projects.
That's so cool, Andy. I didn't, I think oftentimes, like, we all know the power of visualization in sports, as you like to use sports metaphors. and other things that people do. And I don't know that leadership teams often enough take a moment to visualize what success will look like at the end of a big strategy or a big transformation or something as physical and tangible as a new building. And that's very cool that you all did that. You took the time to really visualize what could this be and what could it look like. And then we're able to walk around and say, yeah, like this is what we envisioned. This is what we were
Yeah.
hoping for.
And of course, it helps. It's tangible, so you
Yeah,
had
yeah,
that vision there. When it's more intangible and it's like a strategy for a company, and we all know that if you build a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, whatever your time period is, there'll be so many different angles and different paths that you take, and it's almost like a maze. Sometimes you have to go down and hit a maze straight on, and you can't move. You have to go back, and then you go down another route. So when it's intangible, it's slightly more difficult, but it's still the same concept for me. You do say in 5 years' time, this is where I want to be, and hopefully you generally get to, if you get to 70-80% of the way there, you've been successful. It's that progress versus perfection again.
yeah. I think that's the other thing is realizing that you haven't failed if you're not 100%.
Absolutely.
There are how
Absolutely.
many, I mean, just in school, there's 40 points between perfect and failing. I think like 60, isn't 60% failing usually? I don't know. I've been out of school for too long.
Don't talk to me about a US school. That I'd be
Yeah,
struggling there, Julie.
yeah. Plenty of room between perfect and not failing.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah,
And again, that just to reinforce that feeling, it's sometimes a word. It sounds harsher than it actually is. I'm okay using it. I have definitely failed in multiple things in my career. But again, as I keep saying, it's what you take from that failure. If you just keep doing the same thing again and again and again, then yeah, failure is pretty much a good way to describe it. But if you fail once to learn from it, and then you're much better next time, yeah, that's makes the failure worth it.
absolutely. And I think, too many people, I think, fear failure because they blow it out of proportion almost, right? But
Hmm.
I don't know. I had someone who always used to say, the world's only going to stop once and it's probably not today.
Hmm. Yeah,
And there are
absolutely.
very few things that any of us can do that are going to, literally result in the earth opening up and swallowing us whole. So you may as well give it a try.
Exactly. And there's that again back to the sports thing. Like you can choose any sport you want, but that fear of failure sometimes you can create a dynamic where you try and destroy as opposed to attack or do something that leads to success that way. So that fear of failure is a big thing. And if you're highly competitive, I know I am. I know my team are as well. Sometimes you have to watch that you don't that doesn't rule you. It's not something that you're going to say, right, I'm going to be very careful about my decisions here because I don't want to fail. If you do that, then you'll end up with a company that's flat or maybe slightly down over time. You need to obviously take risks, try and grow, have that mentality, and to do that, you can't just have the status quo.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point, Andy, that the flip side of being highly competitive, which is very useful in life and in business, it's not a bad thing to be competitive. But when you're too competitive, you can start to fear failure because you can't process the risk of losing. And so I think that's a great caution to put out there for people that if you are in a leadership role and you are naturally a really competitive person, you can't let that get out of control to the point where it holds you back from taking risks where you might fail. I
Yeah.
think I think that's a really, really important point for people to hear.
Yeah, and it is difficult, as you and I know. It's really difficult to
Yeah.
have that mentality because when things are thrown at you, COVID, tariffs, whatever
Mm.
the environmental or economic factors are that you can't control, you automatically just go into I need to defend. I need to just make sure I get through this. And sometimes we do forget, right, okay, let's plan what could happen. If this happened again, what could we do differently to make it maybe a little bit less stressful next time? So it's taking that proactive, taking risk type of mentality that you sometimes need to think about. And I don't mean taking risks as in throw everything on black or everything on red. It's more about just thinking about how you balance your risks, thinking about where you prioritize as well is really important. And that's what a good leadership team does.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the teams that do best in terms of staying in alignment with each other are the ones that can challenge each other about, are we taking appropriate risks? Not, like you say, throwing everything over here or over there, but how do we really think about what's the right level of risk that we should be taking right now to move the business forward?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Andy, as we think about coming to the end of this conversation, which I've so enjoyed, thank you for sharing so much about yourself and your thinking about leadership. There's a couple of questions that we always like to ask people before we let them go. And the first one is, if there were two or three, maybe four things that you would say to a leader who needs to get their team aligned to deliver together, what would those things be? What would you really encourage them to do as a leader who's trying to get a team aligned?
Oh, good question. Three or four things. Let me try and make sure that I don't go beyond that. So I'll ruthlessly prioritize here. I think the
Perfect.
first thing is, again, you need to build a team, and one of the things that can happen in an organization is that you have leaders or functions who are very focused on doing the right thing for that function, and sometimes they can forget about the bigger company sort of strategies and goals. So you can call it silo mentality, whatever way you want to describe it. I think the key thing for me is you always have to remember that, again, positive intent. No one goes out of their way to fail. No one goes out of their way to destroy a team. They're trying to do the things that they think are right. And sometimes our metrics or incentives can drive some of that silo to happen. So I think for one of the first things you have to do is just make sure that everyone's aligned on where are we going as a strategy. The strategy is that beacon. Everyone has to be moving towards it. And that's one of the things we've been trying to do in the last year is to get everyone aligned around the strategy and what it means so that everyone knows where we're going. So having that purpose and that vision and that mission and then the key strategy areas is so important. And that hopefully brings that sort of teamwork together. Second thing I would say is have courage. So be open. Everyone, again, if you're assuming positive intent, then respectfully challenge. If you don't agree with something or with someone, then make sure that you call it out, because again, you have to understand. Yeah, if you're in trying to understand you're in someone else's shoes, you have to be able to listen to each other, talk to each other, and understand what they're trying to achieve as well. So have that courage to talk. If you don't talk, then you're always going to be stuck in this world of I wonder what they're thinking, or I wonder what Andy's thinking, and that's not a great world to be in. You have to make sure that you're really clear on that. And then probably I would say, if I had to pick one more thing, it's just around teamwork. It's around making sure that you've got the right structure in place, that you've got the right tactics in place of where we're going, that you trust each other. And if you don't trust each other, try and understand why. Sometimes there's history you have to understand. Sometimes, again, you just need to understand what's going on in their world, and be honest with each other how to improve, and just don't be fearful of failure. Just take, if something does happen that you perceive as failure, learn from it. Pick the one thing that you would do differently next time, and then do it next time. That would be the three or four things I can think of that
I
I would
think you
I would
might have
focus on.
snuck in a fifth one.
I might have, but
Don't fear failure.
I wasn't very
I'll allow it.
good with
I'll allow it.
prioritization, Julie.
That's all
I'll,
right. I think
I'll,
those
I'll
are,
listen to it back and count. Just double
yeah,
check.
but I think we talked about assuming positive intent, having the courage to stand up and really respectfully disagree if you need to, but have those worthy conversations about what is the direction, that clarity around the strategy, knowing the structure and building trust, building a structure where trust can thrive, I think is really important. And then not fearing failure, but being willing to take informed risks, I think is also really important as we go forward. You mentioned one other thing that I just want to pull out before we leave, because I think it is important, and that's around metrics. And that's making sure that people's metrics that you're holding them to are not in conflict with each other. And I think you were mentioning, you're kind of alluding to that a little bit. And would just love, we don't normally do this, but I'd just love to hear you say a couple of words about that, because we see that, Andy, we see that all the time. Leaders are like, why isn't my team aligned? And well, because you're holding them to metrics that are in direct conflict with each other. So how can they be aligned? So just curious if you can give us a little bit of color commentary on that piece, since you mentioned it earlier.
Oh, well, that's probably that's podcast number 2, I
A
think,
whole
Julie.
nother conversation, right?
But if just
Yeah.
to do it in 30 seconds, it is so important. For me, for example, with my executive team, I have tried, and it won't be perfect, but I have tried to make sure that everyone's objectives are sort of aligned with the company objectives, with my objectives, and I call that out. Here's the objective 1, and this is what you're going to do to help. So that's all very good, but making sure then that you share the objectives. So I actually share to the whole executive team everyone else's objectives, so they can actually go and speak separately and say, oh, you've got this objective, that's exactly the same as my objective. And then sometimes I'll call it out as well. Both of you have got the same objective, you need to work together. Again, things change and the world changes and you have to adjust and adapt. But if you have that sort of philosophy, then people at least know what each other has to work on and then how they can help each other. That's probably the advice that I would give at this moment in time. But again, things change. You just have to adapt.
All right. Well, I hear that I can invite you back on to talk about metrics later. but I think that's a pretty good summary. I really like your push around transparency, because I do think if people know what other people's objectives are, they can, as you say, work together so they can both be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just have to, as I say, adapt through the year. It's always, you know, Julie, how it goes. Things change and people change. And so it's really important to at least have the transparency, as you say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, last question for you, Andy. If there was one thing in this world that you could get a group of people aligned to, whether it's your team or someone in your life, your family or your friends, or the world as a whole, or an organization that you're involved with, is there something that you would love to see people get aligned to do together as a community or as a group?
Wow, that's a big question, Julie. So
it's a dream along with me question.
Wow. I think if I went big here, one thing that really annoys me, and I don't know if it probably annoys many people as well, is when you think about politics, and I'm certainly not going to turn this into a politics podcast, but when you think about politics and political parties, typically we all vote for one party in every country around the world. So I'm not saying this is US centric. But what you tend to find is that other parties have some great ideas. But when one party's in power, they'll stick to their policies, which I guess is sticking to a strategy. So you sort of agree with it. But you'll find that there's some other little tweaks they could make by looking at other policies or looking at their peers, their competitors effectively, and saying, actually, if we work together, could we actually make this one thing really powerful for the country? And you don't tend to find that. You tend to find the political parties will just stick with what they've got. And sometimes that can be classed as silo mentality, in my opinion, where they're focused on one thing and they think that what they are doing is right for the country. But if they just looked a little bit to the side, they could actually maybe work together and do something really big for employees. And I certainly won't pick out any particular policies. I think that, but just in general, I think having that alignment to work with each other on certain things that are really important to a country, I think would be really beneficial to many people across the world. But I don't know, Julie, if we can get you to help governments across the world.
You know what? All you can do is you can put things out in the world, right? Let's try it. And you know, I actually think that you're onto something with this idea that it's not just for businesses; it's good for politics too. To listen, to think about positive intent, to assume positive intent, to have the courage to work with other people who are different from you. I think some of the things that we've talked about over the last, 30 or 40 minutes are all things that we could benefit from in a lot of different areas of life, not just in our business world. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your ideas and your experiences with the idea of leadership and getting alignment and working on accomplishing really big goals together as a team. I really appreciate you sharing all of that with our listeners. I just want to say a huge thank you to you for being a guest on the Failure Gap.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks. And to all of our listeners, just a reminder, if you liked this conversation, be sure to comment, share it with your friends, subscribe. We'd really appreciate hearing from you about it. And we will see you next time on The Failure Gap.